major publicity and national commemorations surrounding last week's 75th anniversary of the landing of the Anzac at Gallipoli overshadowed another smaller but no less heroic commemoration from World War II, which was held just north of Darwin. The members of Gull Force 49 years ago were sent from Darwin to Ambon to defend the island's airstrip and harbour from the Japanese. 1,131 men, and many of those were killed. A small group of survivors from Gull Force returned to Ambon this Anzac Day, and Laurie Benvey from Melbourne was one of them, who's with me now. Laurie Benvey, thank you for coming in.
Pleasure.
Tell me your story from December 41.
Well, my story from December 41, when we arrived in Ambon from Darwin, we're mostly Victorian troops, but after I'd been in Ambon a week or two, they sent a party of 300 men to the airstrip at Laha. I was in the mortar platoon, and we were guarding the airstrip. And when the Japs arrived, we had about 4 or 5 days hostilities, and during the hostilities, I was wounded and went to the regimental aid post for treatment, and had to stay there overnight. And early the next morning, the doctor told us that the Japs had taken over the airstrip, and our troops had ended hostilities on that part of the island. And then the walking wounded gave permission to make a break.
So what did you do?
Well, there's about 20 of us made a break, walking wounded, and we were following the rivers right across the other side of the island, and keeping out of sight, of course, but I decided the party was a bit too big, and 2 of us broke away from it, and we had no money. Some of the others had money, and I broke away, but eventually some native boys, Ambonese boys, the Christian family, they said, come with us, they'd feed us and that sort of thing, and I finished up living with them for about 5 months, and I picked up the language. I could never read or write it, and eventually I had malaria and dysentery pretty bad, and the Japs knew that we were in the village. Well, we were in the vicinity, and rather than have the villagers punished, which they would have done, which the Japs would have done, we cleared off, but we weren't too popular in other village by this time because the Japanese patrols kept, so eventually we finished up in the Ambon prison camp, which was originally our barracks.
And what was life like? Well, how long were you in the Ambon prison camp?
Well, I was only about 8 months in the Ambon prison camp, and they shipped a lot. Well, supposedly all the sick man was going to supposedly first-class hospital in Hainan Island off the Chinese coast, but it turned out to be a very good work camp also.
So, Laurie Benvey, where did you go? You went to
I went to Hainan, and fortunately, the malaria left me, and those that had not had malaria in Ambon, they picked up malaria in China, which was a worse malaria, really. I suppose different areas, different types of malaria.
And when did you finally leave Hainan Island?
Hainan Island, we left there about after the end of the war. It was about the 15th, I think it was, of August, and there was six Americans liberated. One was Major Singlow, who we've met a few times in Australia since. He is now he's retired, five-star general.
How did you manage to survive?
Well, I survived, but I was lucky, I suppose. The will to live, and we were starved, of course, and at the end of the period of being locked up, we were finding it very hard as far as food goes. Well, the Japs were really on that part of the island too.
How many members of Gull Force didn't survive?
Well, we went away with approximately 1,200, and from Ambon and Hainan we came home with 300. Today, we're all in the age group where we're reached the age group of 70 or over, and I've been secretary for many years, and we'd only have about 110 left on the books.
How many? Six people? 6 men went back to Ambon this Anzac Day?
No, there was 9 Australians, 4 sailors who liberate the boys on corvettes or destroyers in Ambon, and we had 3 sons who lost their fathers. One of the sons lost his father in the wood party in China. We call it the wood party, where the Chinese came down and annihilated some of the Japanese guards and some of our fellas. And we had 2 sons of the survivors of the trip.
And
in all we had 20 of them.
So how do the Ambonese people greet you?
The Ambonese people are very, very kind, and I visited the village where I harboured, and as a matter of fact, they got a message over to them, and they come over and met me and joined us in the Anzac Day ceremony.
And what do you do on the Anzac Day ceremony?
We start early in the morning, 7:30, and there was most impressive scene. The Navy, Air Force and Army are there, and then we have a catafalque party, and we go through the ritual of the ex-serviceman's service, and many Indonesians there, plus the Army, their Army and Navy. We also, and then we have a luncheon later on and we invite all the locals.
There's a legend that goes with Gull Force. It's the Doolan story.
Yes, the Doolan story. He was. Unfortunately, it was never witnessed by an officer, but he apparently was in a particular village. I think it was Kutamati, and he did quite a bit of damage to the Japanese with a machine gun. And
he put a machine gun up a tree?
Yeah, something like that. Yes, and. We have erected a cairn there with a memorial. It was a plaque that was supplied by the Victorian RSL for all the Australians that were killed in that district.
How would you describe what Gull Force did? Was it courageous? Was there?
Well, we consider it was courageous, and being so close to Australia, it was only 600 miles north of Darwin. I think it's north, and apparently we held them up for 5 or 6 days, and unfortunately we didn't have enough arms and things like that, the modern stuff, but we had been in training for many months.
Do you feel sad when you commemorate on Gallipoli Day that Australia hasn't recniced the efforts in the war of people like Gull Force?
I do, because it's only recently that they're recognised in some of the Japanese as far as disability allowances and that sort of thing, and some of us have been too proud to say, well, I'm sick, what about disability allowance?
But there's been a lot of talk, Laurie, about the Gallipoli myth and the Gallipoli legend of what it means to Australia. Do you think, though, that what people like yourself did in World War II is unrecognised in that the growth of Australia as a nation?
I think it is, and it's only now that the grandchildren are saying where their grandfathers died or passed on since the war, since they've returned, they say, what did Daddy do during the war? What did Grandfather do during the war? We didn't tell people very much about probably hardships or anything like that. We just told them perhaps the good times we had.
So, but your story involves courage, it involves mateship, it involves all those qualities.
Terrific mateship and people helping each other when they were sick and all that sort of thing.
So if Australia wants to be looking back at heroism, they could just as easily look back at what Gull Force did as to what the veterans at Gallipoli did.
Oh, I consider that, yes. I'd say that is correct, because we lost so many men on pro rata from our battalion. There was a lot of men lost in Changi and on the Burma railway line and all that sort of thing. But our particular battalion, we're a self-sufficient force of 1,200 with attached troops. That's why it was called Gull Force. And the code name, when there's other the assist battalion was called the Sparrow Force and that sort of thing. But really, I think they say that we consider that we lost more men than from one unit in a confined area.
Well, Laurie Benvey, thank you for coming in this morning. Will you be going back to Ambon next year?
No, I'm afraid I won't, because I'm getting a bit old and the tropics are a bit hard for me now.
Yeah.
But I've paid my tributes there for a few times, but I'll leave it to the younger people.
Well, Laurie Benvey, thank you for coming.
It's Sunday on what's now the Indonesian island of Ambon. The one day of the week on which no one works except a handful of storekeepers. In terms of physical beauty, Ambon is about as close to paradise as you're ever likely to get. And wherever you look, there's peace. It wasn't always so.
But in the camp, in the latter part of the war, I was also on the burial party. If you were a cook, you were on the burial party, and I'd say, what about from June onwards, was nearly every day.
45?
Yeah,
oh,
45, yeah. From June onwards, almost every day there was a...
July 45, there were 97 who died, over 3 a day.
We did actually get some bones that the Japanese had already cut the meat off and made soup, and now and again we would get some fish, but very little. But apart from that, we supplemented our diet. We had little plots, but as far as eating things are concerned, I can tell you this personally. I've eaten cat, rat, lizard, frog, snake, and snails. And with these, that was the sort of thing that actually that was going on all the time. We had the Dutch with us as well. We had a number of Dutch with us as well. They didn't fare any better, of course. We were side by side in the camp. But believe me, the amount of food that you got and the work that was expected of men took its toll. But let's face it, it's one of those, I think, Australian traits that survive at any cost virtually, you know, and self-preservation became the key factor.
Well, yes, but the mind and the brain and the body can absorb a lot of this if you're prepared to and not worry too much. I mean, I think my main forte was the fact that I never ever thought I wouldn't get home. And this was the problem. If you thought for 1 minute that you weren't going to live, you could tell a fellow when he was going to die within a couple of days. He just threw in the sponge. It's unfortunate, but it happened. They'd suffered so much pain.